Oh, I'll tell you, you always get the greatest people on topics on for our shows, and I like this. Is going to be a good discussion. This will be something that people need to, even the most advanced, need to really collaborate with other departments to justify what they're doing.
It's really easy to find good guests when they come up to you and they tell you, hey, and they're very friendly and everything. Mollie, in this case, every time I see her at a conference, she's so nice. She always comes up, says hi, and it doesn't hurt that she always talks about the show. So, so of course I'm
Well,
going
there
to
you
have
go.
her on the show. And she's been on the show as well. So,
Yeah.
so we're talking about Mollie Sitkowski from Faegre Drinker. And I hope I didn't mess any of those up, but that's that she's been on our show before with Anik. She's done a course with Global Training Center and several other groups that she collaborated with, and so she's been around with us and been a friend of the podcast and of Global Training Center. So I'm really happy to have her here again and talking about this. I threw the challenge out to her. I said, give me a good court case. I want to talk about a good court case. And we haven't had a crimes episode since the Larry one, the Marvel Comics one. So,
Oh, I
so I
love
really,
that one.
yeah.
Very good.
So I really wanted to have another one, and I said, "Okay, I know Mollie, you can do it," and she pulled it off. So this was really cool, like you said, Andy.
Yeah. Welcome, Mollie. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited. I love
Yeah.
Anik, but I'm excited to be with the guys who were also on the CSIS trade
Oh yeah,
podcast. I mean, you guys are what, number one and number two? One of you is
Yeah.
one of you is two, who knows?
we,
Um,
we let our audience determine whoever
yeah.
that may be. It's like
yeah.
it's been.
You see, so she
And
really is a fan. She knows all of this. I mean, thank you,
I'm
Mollie.
telling you, I'm impressed here.
We talked about the
And
two
you know what?
listeners
It
that.
is humbling. It's every time, Lalo, you've gotten to go out and you keep telling me. I missed several conferences here recently, but it's so humbling when people like Mollie come up and they actually talk about the show and they listen to us. It's like, wow, this is cool.
Right. We talked to the trade guys, and they said, they phrased something really funny, and they said, for our two listeners, of course, they meant two listeners for the two shows, but they
yeah.
said two listeners, and we joked about it. So we just happened to find one of those two listeners right here
Yeah.
with Mollie.
Oh, I
Mystery
love it.
solved.
I love it. Well, we're going to be talking about a really interesting court case here, and we normally you mentioned the crimes series that we usually do, where we get an attorney, pick a court case, and it's usually somebody that has messed up and had some problems. In this case, it's kind of the reverse of that, and
Yeah.
it's actually an importer that is taking on the government, if you will. I'm doing a heck of a lot of paraphrasing. So, Mollie, why don't you tell us what we're going to talk about today and what the basis here
Yeah,
is?
so I mean, before all the Trump tariffs, the difference in duty rates between a 2.5% and a 5.5% article was, a lot to importers. And so Randy Rucker, one of the litigators in our office, he, has spent the last 25-ish years coming up with ideas on tariff classification and working with importers to see if that's valuable or not, and seeing where they can save money. And I used to do this with him, and then I left the firm and went in-house for a year during the Trump administration. So this was one of the cases I worked on the initial stages, and then right as I was coming back, we got our final decision on it. So it was kind of like a welcome back to the firm. Look, we finally won this case. And I want to say these opinions are my own, and also my swears. I'm going to bleep myself, but just in case, sometimes I get fired up. Those are my own too.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, well, listen, that's the beauty of it. It makes it human because it's like, this is like us sitting around having a cup of coffee or a beer or a drink or something, and we're just talking.
Well, this is actually a good point to also remind everybody that our disclaimer on our show. Actually, I know you all probably don't read it or anything, but there's actually a disclaimer there that says you listen to the show, so you accept these terms, which is basically that we're not offering any legal advice. You should go talk to your attorney. If you don't have one, we have a great one here on the show right now. And it's mostly for educational, informational, and in many cases, entertainment purposes. So please be aware of that, and do check and double check everything that we're saying or that you might apply to you. So anyway, I just thought I better remind everybody about that, because we, that is important.
So, Mollie, what are we talking about today?
So we're talking about a Home Depot case about doorknobs. And it was all so simple to me. Basically, Home Depot, in your house, you kind of have four types of doorknobs. You'll have what's known as a dummy doorknob on a closet, and that won't have any latching function. It just literally just opens and closes the closet.
Just a knob.
Yeah, and then you'll have a passage knob in I don't know. I don't really have any of these in my house because I do like locking knobs. But anyway,
we have them in the closets.
You have them in closets, so they
Yeah.
just close the closet and no one can lock you in there, which is actually good. And maybe I should do that because my 3-year-old did lock me inside a closet one time. And then there's the privacy knobs, and these are the ones where I got locked in, where you push on one side and it locks, and then the other side there's nothing except if you find a quarter or a bobby pin, or you have like a little tool that you get but you always lose it, to unlock the knob. And then there is the security knobs, or the ones that you might have on your front door, or maybe if on your liquor cabinet or your liquor closet, whatever it is. And one side is the push button and the other side is a key. And so this court case was because the first three without keys, customs classified as doorknobs, base metal mountings or fittings under heading 8302. And the fourth one with a key, they classified as a keyed lock under 8301. And I was like, well, if you look at all of these, they're all doorknobs, right? And we actually
That's the essential character, if you will, right?
we made an exhibit for the court. My husband did, and it was just the three doorknobs, and then on top was a deadbolt. Like, hey, look, these are all doorknobs, and that up there is a lock. And then whenever I would call the court after that, people would be like, "Are you that doorknob girl?" Yeah.
I don't know how to take that.
But so if you look in the court case, the CIT upon remand does talk about the keyed lock exhibit is what it's called or something. But so initially the court of international trade held that they were locks under 8301, and we appealed, and we took it to the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, and they said, you know what, this doorknob with a keyed entry is actually a composite article, and so it needs to be classified pursuant to General Rule of Interpretation 3B, which we might all know is the essential character test. So,
okay, so before you go any further, hang on for just a second.
Yeah.
So Home Depot, let me make sure, because my memory's as long as a turtle's tail and just as fast. So I have to look at it and say, okay, let me make sure I got this. Is that Home Depot had purchased these items, obviously in bulk. They were imported, obviously, from wherever. They're doorknobs, and so they were classifying them in a certain way. These particular doorknobs had a lock in them. All right, so we go through that, and they've been importing them. At some point, customs or an inspector or somebody looked at it, or a specialist, and said, you're classifying these incorrectly, and changed the classification, and either did a CF 28 or 29, took action with it. But basically, customs made a decision, said, you're classifying wrong. So from this point on, this doorknob with a lock should be classification number 2.
With the lock and the key. Because there were
With the lock.
ones with locks that they said were fine under heading 8302. But they
Okay.
said if it had a key, it had to go under heading 8301.
Okay. And then as that progressed, I'm sure there was a protest filed of some kind.
There
Right.
was. It was a protest with accelerated disposition.
Right. And
Because,
then customs came back and said, no, we're still saying it's classification number 2, a lock with a key. Then you filed the lawsuit, right?
mm-hmm,
And and went into the CIT, the Court of
mm-hmm.
International Trade. They upheld customs.
Yeah.
And so then another appeal. So Home Depot is not giving up on this. This is like they keep hammering away. So
Mm-hmm.
I like the persistence. All right. So now we're at this court, this next level up, and I'll reference that again. And they're saying, oh, wait a minute, it's just not a doorknob. They're saying it's a composite item, which means I can give my country boy version of what that means, but I'll defer to you here. So what does that mean?
So they said basically it wasn't fully described as a lock and it wasn't fully described as a doorknob. It was a combination of the two. And so in order to classify it, they sent it back to the Court of International Trade to decide whether it was more important as a doorknob or more important as a lock, which is the essential character test. Kind of what is the essential function or component that would determine the classification.
So this is where we kind of bring in, and I was looking at this as my work in trade has mostly been lately a lot more in marketing, and like the way we talk about and present ideas for the industry. And so I guess this is where that comes in, right, Mollie? Where if you are Home Depot and you're bragging about how safe this door is because it's got a really good lock, then that basically could affect you, right? I'm going back to the Marvel case that Larry talked about, because they actually used the movie as evidence, and they said in the movie they say X-Men are humans, and they're mutants, but
That's
they
literally
don't.
the whole point of the movie.
Yes, they
We're
are
all
mutants.
humans.
Yeah, we're all human.
Yeah.
And so, but they were arguing they're not. They're toys, or dolls. They're not dolls. They're toys, or whatever. Vice versa. I mean, I'm forgetting that. But anyway, so same thing here, right? I mean, the way they advertise it. Did they go into their advertising, their marketing, and?
They did. So the essential character test, like if you look at the tariff schedule or rulings, the essential character test can be one of the components is the most important by quantitative factors, by weight, value, quantity of components, or you can look at qualitative factors. And so this case was very interesting because as part of the qualitative factors, so what component is more important by quality, the court really looked at marketing and consumer expectations. Why are they buying this? How is this being marketed? And that I think is very instructive for importers now, both for tariff classification purposes and for origin purposes. Because origin is really, really important as countries are going to get different rates after July 24th again. And customs uses primarily, they're technically not supposed to, the court did say to consider all factors, but customs primarily also applies an essence test, which they apply in a very similar manner to the essential character test by looking at what component for origin purposes provides the essence to the article. So this is a good case to look at because it really delves into what companies should be looking at when they're determining tariff classification origin, but also what they can do to help make their arguments stronger if customs is going to ask them about it.
Okay, Mom, before we go further, I just want to mention to our audience, we've mentioned GRI. That stands for the General Rules of Interpretation when you're classifying. You can go through and find out what that means. But basically, there is a methodology to classifying goods, and it is very important to follow those rules. What Mollie is saying right now is this is something to the executives and ownership of companies that are middle management or whatever. If you're looking at, and obviously sales and marketing is involved, and purchasing, everybody else is involved with things, but this is something where, Lalo, you may want to make comment on. But again, when we're talking about a commodity and you're looking at something, a part, a widget, a product does not just happen. It usually takes weeks, if not months, for a item to be designed, looked at, sourced, put into your inventory, the marketing material, and all of that. So as you're looking at this is another key reason why you should have your import-export compliance folks at the table, not just for transportation and of the products and things of that, but to look at strategic planning
Mm-hmm.
and look at things that what you can and cannot do, and all of that. Would you agree with that, Mollie?
100%. And one of the nice things about all of the Trump tariffs is that it has been bringing trade compliance people to the table. But to your point, Andy, they can come earlier. They're coming earlier now to talk about origin, but you said design. And that was actually one of the factors that the Home Depot court looked at was what was this designed to do? Was it designed as a lock, or was it designed to allow people passage through a door? And that was one of the questions they asked. And luckily, it was designed primarily to pass through a door, and the lock is like an incidental function. But yeah, having that design early, and then also on the back end, having the marketing support that design. So right now, a lot of people are using Chapter 98 provisions, and those are actual use provisions. And you have to prove things are used in the manner that you're bringing them in. The agriculture use provision, the Nairobi Protocol, which is kind of the Articles for Disabled People provision. And you have to prove that they're being used that way. And one of the ways you can do that is making sure that all your marketing information is on point to show customs that this is the purpose behind them, and this is what your consumers expect when you're having them.
That right there is, I got to tell you, if there's nothing else that somebody picks up from this particular show, it is the importance of, folks. I'm telling you, your executive leadership, this is something you ought to send the link to this show and get them to listen to this, and make sure that from a strategic perspective, you've got the right people. You got your purchasing, you got your compliance, you've got your sales and marketing. Everybody at the table, listen to this. If there's nothing else, listen to this. Your marketing should back up how you're classifying that, and your compliance people need to look at it and say, are we okay? You got a new product. Yeah, we're classifying it here. Or no, you need to add this or change this wording or whatever. That's where your communications people come into play.
Mm-hmm.
You can say something more effectively and still be more legally compliant using your communications people. So it's just an interwoven thing. But Mollie, this is phenomenal. So as we're going through, what was the big deal? We're talking 2% difference in duties. There must have been some big time dollars involved for Home Depot, to keep after this.
I mean, it was big time dollars back in 2017.
Yeah. Now they're astronomical dollars.
Yeah, now the threshold is a lot different, but at the time, yes, it was big time dollars. But yes, now it's, people are looking at hundreds of millions of dollars in duties. So this was a little bit different, but the use of those Chapter 98 provisions, agricultural use Nairobi Protocol, those can save you those hundreds of millions of dollars. And customs is looking at your marketing information when they're looking at whether you qualify for those claims. So, and then also the essence, the origin. I mean, we had China up to 174% tariffs at some point last year. And if customs is applying an essence test to your origin, and you say that the most important part of your vacuum cleaner is the motor, then talk about how powerful the motor is in your vacuuming, your vacuum marketing materials. So it's good from a tariff classification and now an origin perspective, just because of the way customs has been applying the substantial transformation test.
One of the things that I noticed, I actually dug in a little deeper on this, Molly, and I had the question as to why would even Home Depot care if it's not their product, but I guess I found out it is their product. It's just a white label brand of theirs, Defiant, and so
Yeah.
that's why they were fighting it super hard. Otherwise, they would have probably been suing Defiant for charging them more or less than, and would have, if Defiant was an independently owned company, they would have been the ones that would have had to gone through all this trouble, correct?
Well, if Home Depot was purchasing from them domestically, yes. But
Yeah,
if Home Depot was the importer of record, they would have still had standing, even if it was an unrelated
right.
manufacturer.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess my other question would be then, I guess that the Quickset, Slage, and all these other guys quickly follow suit and say, hey, we're getting overcharged.
They did. And well, I think so at least. But the nice thing with court cases, at least previously, is that you could go if someone was challenging a tariff classification and you wanted to kind of hop onto it, but you didn't want to pay any money, you could file protective protests requesting suspension of the protest while this other court case was pending. And so if your competitor won, then you would have the protective protest and customs would be bound to follow the court case for your products as well. Some people are trying to do that for the fastener case on the steel valuation that's pending right now. I've heard that customs has been pushing back on that, but it's a very valid way to kind of, I say for importers, a rising tide lifts all boats. And this is a way for the rising tide. If someone else is litigating something you're interested in, you don't necessarily have to join the litigation yourself. You can file protective protests and request suspension pending the outcome of that case.
Now, here's the one thing that I think it would be worth mentioning. We've been talking about this case, and yeah, there's a lot of persistence in this. What was the result here after all going through all of this? And we can come back again with some of the marketing. I think we need to talk of that, but was it worth it?
Yeah, they were effing doorknobs, as I pointed out. I was like, we just need to show the court they're all doorknobs. And the court agreed.
Nice.
Okay. So to that point, is that with all of that, obviously they was significant. So any duties that were charged, higher duties due to the other classification, Home Depot then could then submit for a refund on that, right?
If they had filed protective protests. So a court case will only get you a refund on the entries at issue before the court. If you want more refunds, then you have to go and file protests or PSCs if the entries are unliquidated after the court's decision. But I mean, these court decisions take 3, 4, 5 years, and you won't have PSCable entries for that entire period of time. So if you want to protect your right to refunds for a 1581A tariff classification case, which is different than our 1581I learning selections VOS resources cases, learning resources VOS selections case. Different from that. But if you want to protect your refunds under a 1581A case, you have to file protests within that 180 days after liquidation.
Folks, I think it warrants a little bit here. This is a somewhat more of an advanced topic as we're getting into the details on this. You need to get yourself proficient with some of the things we're talking about. And Lalo hasn't told me to say this, but I'm telling you, Global Training Center, there's other, training things out there, but I'm telling you, you've got to get yourself proficient, even with a fundamental of knowledge on a lot of products and topics in this, and then you can keep going and get more advanced. The other side of this is, do not try and do these things on your own. There is a lot of legal positioning, even in the procedures and the bureaucracy. It's not really a court case. It may be a petition, but that's what customs attorneys are experts in. So sorry for a little thing there, but that's to promote both Mollie and to Lalo and his company. I'm
Yeah,
telling
well,
you, they're
I've
good.
been subliminally telling people here that it's not your trade department that needs to be going to training or learning all this. I mean, you need to also have your marketing department maybe attend a tariff classification class and see why, the engineers for sure, and purchasing and all those other folks, sales and all that might need a light version of it as to why it's important. But that leads me to my other question, Mollie. Do you I'm sure you do deal with companies that are startups or maybe a client that may not be a startup but might be around for a while, but they're looking to create a whole new product. Would you go through this type of exercise with them and say, okay, so you're developing this product, this cool little widget, it's really neat. What like how do you advise them, or do you take them down the Home Depot path, let's say, on why you would want to call it this versus that, why you want to, even the packaging might be different, even your commercials and the way people, I mean, do you go through stuff like that, or is that do people just come to you when it's too late, I guess?
No, we definitely, and I mean, it is the trade compliance functions who we primarily work with. And if they are integrated within the organization, then they can bring us in at the beginning of those things. And it's very, very, very helpful for costing purposes, for packaging purposes. One of the other things that's covered by GRI 3B are retail sets. And retail sets have to be in their packaging as sold to the ultimate purchaser here in the United States, or the ultimate consumer. And retail sets are really cool right now because the product that provides the essential character of the retail set. So my primary example is maybe too old for some of your listeners, but when you used to go buy a computer at like Best Buy or Circuit City, and you would get the hard drive, you get the monitor, and you get the keyboard, and you get the mouse all in one package. And it's all intended for use as a computer. That was a retail set. Different things classified in different headings, packaged together for one purpose. That's a retail set. And Customs has said since the Section 301 China tariffs back in 2018 that the tariff duty rate and origin are determined based on the essential component of the set. So the product in the set that provides its tariff classification, that origin is what is controlling for purposes of all these new retaliatory tariffs. That tariff classification of that essential component is what's controlling for purposes of the aluminum and steel tariffs, for example. And so if you have a retail set that your company has developed and you bring trade compliance in early, they can really, really help you save money there.
Is the question that executives should be asking of their marketing and their compliance is either, are we in conflict
Mm-hmm.
of anything from the compliance and the marketing? You two guys, you two departments need to get together and tell me of what's being imported internationally. Are we in conflict as far as what we're describing, or what we're describing and classifying the goods in the international paperwork versus how we're marketing that? Would that be a good question for them to ask?
That is a great question, and that is a conversation we have had with a lot of executives, especially over the use of Nairobi Protocol, which is articles specially designed for the handicapped. And a lot of medical device companies are wanting to use the Nairobi Protocol right now. But when you go on their website, they talk about how this device has applicability for everyone and their mother. And you're like, you can't use Nairobi Protocol if you are selling this to every market known to man. Like, you need to make sure it's being used in long-term care facilities. You need to make sure it's being used. And your sales data, it may be 95% long-term care facilities, but you're trying to market it to other people too. Figure out what you want to do, and then we can talk about Nairobi.
Yeah, find the niche, what
Yeah.
you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, and then look to see, are there other things that will help support what you've got. Don't You can, and it's not illegal to do, to say, hey, you know what? here's this product, we're bringing it in. Is the market for utilizing the Nairobi protocol, does that fit our market? Yeah, okay, fine. But again, you're collaborating on that to do it. You're not coming in and saying,
Right.
hey, this is a jack of all trades for everybody, and we're going to utilize this over here. So that's kind of false in you want to keep it on the up and up on everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you can't falsify sales data. But if your sales
Mm-hmm.
data shows that you're selling it to long-term care facilities, but your marketing materials doesn't match that, then bring it in line together. Yeah, that's all strategy, and trade compliance should be involved in all of it. Because right now, well, not now, but July 25th, every country is going to have a different duty rate again. We are going to see more additions to the aluminum and steel derivatives list probably in the next month or so. So tariff classification is going to be important. And if trade compliance is helping people understand the importance of decisions they're making in the beginning, that will help save money right now, at least for the next 3 years, in terms of how people are importing these.
Phenomenal. I love this. This is a good discussion. This is one of those that it is an advanced topic, but it's one that can cross a whole lot of different departments in a company to if you're going to be effective at what you're talking about there. Because the other decision is this is, again, you're taking a product, you're marketing it, you're using it, you're selling it, whatever. If customs challenges your classification, if you're doing the things correctly on the front end like this, I think your point is that it only helps your case and helps hopefully get a decision in your favor, right?
Yeah. One of the first thing customs does when they get your invoice, after they request your documents, when they get your invoice, they're going to Google it. And so if the thing that they're Googling is inconsistent with what you have told them on your invoice, that's going to be something they notice right away.
I know they're using AI, I guess, to make it faster. But anyway.
Well, the Google AI, comes up at top of mind. I don't know if it comes up for everyone.
Well, Mollie, any other questions that the executives in this case need to be looking at? I mean, we're talking about maybe trying to be preventative. What about maybe there's some situations right now that your compliance department is like, customs has ruled against you, if you will, on certain classifications, but they've never raised the issue up. Is that something that,
Yeah, their question should be, are you integrated with the product managers and the product developers to have these discussions at the beginning? Right now, tariff classification doesn't matter as much, but product managers and product developers are equally as involved almost in sourcing, at least for the components. And so, if customs is using an essence test for origin, and you can get in and say, listen, they're going to consider the motor to be the essence of that vacuum. Let's figure out where that motor should be sourced from. That's something that trade compliance can get involved in early. So the executive should be asking if they're integrated with product development and product managers at the outset.
You just hit on another thing that Lalo made mention of it. It's not just your trade compliance folks that should be getting the training. A product manager and engineers and all that should definitely take, just like what Lalo was saying, you take a basic classification course, it opens you up to a whole lot your knowledge base really grows. Even if you don't become proficient at the skill of classifying, you have a much greater appreciation, not only the people that do the classification, hence the customs brokers, but what it takes and the information thereof.
Yeah. Why these people are asking you all these stupid questions.
Yeah. Hey, folks, I'm telling you, this is one of those. If you're a leader, you better be looking at your product managers and engineers and whatnot.
And
what's the last course you've taken? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lalo.
No, I was going to say, as a trade person in the company, you can then stop being seen as the no person, right? I mean, it's like it's not. I'm not saying no just to be a jerk. I'm actually doing it because this. I want to
Trying to
protect this.
protect the
Yeah,
company. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So cool.
Well, Mollie, this is great information. Any last words here before we sign off for the day?
Nope, just, I mean, the different origins are coming. More tariff classifications are going to be added to the aluminum and steel list, so be ready. Figure out your ag use, your Nairobi Protocol, your DRI 3B sets, and their essences soon.
I love it. Well, and also be prepared to be persistent. To Home Depot and their team and their import export compliance group, kudos to y'all, because you were able to be persistent, keep going. I'm sure after every decision is like, well, should we even go any further than this? Well, it means a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
to their credit, they actually blazed a trail on that one for the industry there, the doorknob industry anyway. So, okay, well, with that, folks, we appreciate your listenership. Like us, share us, keep it going. I don't know. The last time I checked with Lalo, I think we had 42 countries. I'm sure we may have a few more of listeners around the world. And in today's world, oh my gosh, global trade has really, it's expanded, the knowledge is expanded, and things are going crazy, and disruptions and everything else. So you have to be adaptable to what's going on in the industry. So with all of that, though, Mollie, again, thank you so much. Hope you'll come back to us and with another, topic or something. It'd be a great discussion.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
You were great. Thank you, Mollie.
All right, folks. Have a great day.
Have a good one.